It's November, so I'm looking at Game Boy Color games. Today we got Micro Machines V3. This game is a port of the PlayStation game of the same name, which was awesome by the way, and it shares a lot in common with that game in terms of gameplay, presentation, and tracks. It's classic Micro Machines, a top-down racing game that takes place at common locations around the house. Like most Micro Machines games, you get the standard racing mode, where you and 4 other drivers gotta compete to finish races first, and you also get the head-to-head mode, where 2 players share the same camera, and if you get so far ahead of the other player that the camera leaves them behind, then you get a point. And in addition, you get a time trial challenge, where you race 3 laps by yourself and you gotta get a fast enough time to move on. So there's a lot of stuff to do here. You might remember that Micro Machines 1 and 2 Twin Turbo on Game Boy Color was also a port of some console Micro Machines games, but unlike those games, V3 was a fully 3D PS1 game, so it really had no hope of being a one-to-one port on Game Boy Color. So instead, they just made a new game from the ground up with the Game Boy Color in mind, and then kind of tweaked it to be closer to the PS1 version, which honestly I think it worked out in this game's favor. You still get that recognizable feel and gameplay from the console game, but the controls and level design have been tweaked a little bit to better suit the Game Boy Color and its tiny screen, which actually worked out really well, because the cars still control great, but I didn't find screen crunch to be a massive issue here. The game is well designed around the small screen, which is something I cannot say for most Game Boy Color racing games. As usual, you control a different car on each track, and they all feel a little different, but I didn't feel like there were any this time that were too hard to control. It feels like these cars slide around a lot less than they usually do, which makes it a lot easier to control. It's a really fun game. I swear, this game pretty much just took all my complaints about Micro Machines Twin Turbo on Game Boy Color and fixed them. Screen crunch makes it too hard to see upcoming turns? Not really an issue here. No ability to save your single player progress? Well, now there's a password saving option. And some cars are too annoying to handle? Not a problem here. 2-player mode forces the D-pad player to steer using up and down instead of left and right? Even that's been fixed. Speaking of which, the 2-player mode where 2 people share the same Game Boy Color is back, because the cars automatically accelerate just like before, and player 1 steers with the D-pad, while player 2 steers with A and B. And you also get a new party play option where up to 8 people can take turns passing the Game Boy around to see who can get the best time on a track, which is a nice touch, even though I don't think anyone's really going to do that anymore. Overall, this game's just awesome, because it controls great, there's a lot to do, and it's just a very fun game to play. And plus, it's very faithful to the original console version, so I think if you were a kid back then who loved that game and wanted a portable version of it, then you'd probably have been really happy with this one. This is right up there with Mickey Speedway USA as one of the best racing games on the system, and I would highly recommend it.